screen down. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dana Ladner with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of this morning's team on our webinar, Bioenergy Projects and Apprenticeships. And with funds from the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Acts and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Kansas and Kansas companies have new opportunities for funding, which come with requirements on workforce development and registered apprenticeships. Why is this important? Well, because the infrastructure bills provide tax credits for those companies utilizing the registered apprenticeship program. And we're aware that there are several ag projects in the state that want to use the programs, but may not fully understand what the specifics of those programs are. So thus why we're having the webinar. So this morning, we're going to be joined, Jake Renner with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Shonda Anderson with the Office of Registered Apprenticeships, and Megan Wills. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Megan, and then we're going to get things kicked off this morning. So Megan is a Senior Technical Assistant Consultant in the Workforce Program at the American Institutes for Research based in Arlington, Virginia. Her primary responsibilities include providing strategic support and technical assistance to strengthen and modernize the registered apprenticeship system and expanding the use of registered apprenticeships to train and prepare an educated workforce. She has 12 years of experience in workforce and education policy at the national and state levels. She's a skilled technical assistance provider and facilitator with significant experience supporting governors' advisors, state workforce and education system leaders, and private sector leads as they prepare workers for careers today and in the future. Megan, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dana. It is great to be here with all of you this morning. I know it is bright and early out there in Kansas. I'm based on the East Coast, just outside of Washington, D.C., so I've had an hour more of coffee in my system, but it is great to kick off the morning with all of you. So I'm going to kick things off by giving a relatively brief presentation about the federal infrastructure laws and what some of the opportunities are. Give me just a second, and I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully folks can see a title slide that is blue. Can someone let me know if you can see the title slide?
You are
Excellent.
good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shonda. I appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, like I mentioned, I'm just going to start with an overview of what the opportunities are in the federal infrastructure laws. So before I dig into that, I just want to start with a really quick overview as who is the American Institutes for Research and what is kind of the lens and perspective that I bring to this conversation this morning. So the American Institutes for Research, we've been around since 1946. As I mentioned, we're based just outside of Washington, D.C. We're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that focuses on conducting research and delivering technical assistance to address urgent challenges both here in the U.S. and around the world on topics including education, healthcare, workforce, which is my area of focus, human services, and international development. The lens I'm bringing to this conversation today is through AIR's role as the technical assistance provider to all of the states across the country that have received state apprenticeship expansion grants from the U.S. Department of Labor. We have been the national technical assistance provider to all of those state grantees dating back to 2016. And we really work with states to expand the use of registered apprenticeship as a key workforce development strategy to expand registered apprenticeship programs into new industries, which is really what we're talking about here today, and also to increase diversity in registered apprenticeship programs. Shonda in the Kansas Office of Apprenticeship is one of the fantastic grantees that we get the pleasure of working with. So that's my perspective and the lens that I bring to the conversation today. So I'm going to dig right in on what are these federal infrastructure investments? So I'm going to provide a high-level overview today of the federal infrastructure investments. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the workforce implication of those investments and identify some opportunities where folks can use registered apprenticeship programs to build a skilled workforce to really support these infrastructure projects. Before I go any further, I have to share a caveat that these are massive, massive investments of funds. So I am literally just going to be scratching the surface today. These massive funding investments are funding hundreds, if not thousands, of different projects and programs from a multitude of federal agencies. And there are, I think I just saw that there are literally tens of thousands of individual projects in states and communities all across the country. So I certainly can't go into all of that depth and detail, but I'm just going to provide sort of a high level overview of what these investments are supporting and kind of what the national landscape is for the expansion of our infrastructure in this country and the different ways that that looks. So just to start off with, we're really looking ahead to a decade of building out our country's infrastructure, which takes a number of different forms. I'm really going to talk today about two specific federal laws that really are in making significant investments in our infrastructure. There is a third law that I'll just mention very briefly, but I'm not going to talk about it today. So the first law that I'm going to talk about, the larger of the two that I'll focus on today, is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. It's also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So if you see references to EJA or to Bill, BIL, those are referring to the same law. It's just two different names that people are using for the same law. It invests more than $860 billion through 2026. And it has a couple of different focus areas. It's really focused on the infrastructure lens that this law takes is really on transportation, climate, energy, and the environment, as well as broadband infrastructure. This law, the funds that are distributed through this law primarily go out through formula funding to states, but there are also some competitive grants that go to a variety of different entities and organizations across the country. So that's the big one of the two that I'll talk about. I will also talk a bit about the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA. This law invests more than $430 billion over 10 years through 2032. And I really wanted to mention this law because it does have a real strong focus on clean energy. These investments are really focused on reducing carbon emissions and supporting the increased use of a variety of clean energy strategies. A primary funding mechanism through this law is actually the use of incentives for private sector investments, largely through the form of tax credits. This law does have tax credits that have a direct incentive for the use of registered apprenticeships. So definitely want to let folks know about that. And the Inflation Reduction Act also includes some funding through competitive grants. Through these laws, as I mentioned earlier, a wide range of federal agencies are funding hundreds of separate programs and incentives. And many of these programs really provide great opportunities to support registered apprenticeship and workforce development just because of the need for a greater number of skilled workers to literally build these projects. So that's really the lens on this. Just keep that in mind as I'm talking. So I just wanted to start here so folks know kind of what the scale is of these investments and what the broad buckets are of infrastructure that these investments are looking at. Want to underscore workforce development is an allowable and encouraged activity in many of these funding vehicles. For most of them, it's not an explicit requirement, but it is certainly encouraged and incentivized. And specifically, the use of registered apprenticeship is encouraged throughout these as well. Again, the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, that does have a specific direct connection to workforce or to registered apprenticeship, but most of the other investments that I'll be talking about, workforce development, job training, things like that, is certainly encouraged. So just encourage you to keep that all in mind as I'm talking. So, what are the sectors that are impacted by this? I talked a little bit about this as I was talking about the specific investments, but this is really the range of what we're talking about as infrastructure in this country. So, transportation is a really big area of focus of these funds. Um, this includes both transportation within a region and transportation between regions. So this includes everything from bridges and roads to public transportation to bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And then the between regions transportation includes things like passenger rail, airports, and highways. Again, lots and lots of money is going into strengthening the transportation infrastructure in this country. There's also funding going to trade and logistics, including freight rail, air cargo, trucking, warehousing, all of those kinds of things. I talked a little bit already about energy being a focus of both of the two laws, but particularly the Inflation Reduction Act. This includes generation, transmission, and distribution of energy. Again, some funding vehicles are specifically focused on clean energy. Water is another area of focus in terms of infrastructure, including drinking water and stormwater treatment. Telecommunications is another big investment, really building out and strengthening our country's broadband, high speed internet infrastructure. And then also public works, including streetscapes, land redevelopment, waste and landfills, things like that. So again, this is a really broad range of sectors that are impacted where these by these investments, and just start to think about all of the different workers that will need to be in place to really build this variety of infrastructure in the country. So I'm going to share a couple of examples of specific programs that are funded through through IIJA and IRA, just to give you a sense of how these massive federal investments are showing up in states and communities. Again, these are just a handful of examples. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of specifically funded programs. So again, these are just a few examples. So I already mentioned that transportation is a really big area of focus. A couple of examples of what transportation projects are being funded through these laws. So state departments of transportation are receiving about $50 billion every year in total across all states in the country from the U.S. Department of Transportation, specifically to build out and strengthen the highway infrastructure, including formula funding programs that support things like highway performance, safety, congestion mitigation, and air quality improvement. There are a couple of competitive programs as well that are supported by the U.S. Department of Transportation that support transportation and multimodal highway and freight projects. Again, I'm just going to include this as a reminder on each of the slides. The U.S. Department of Transportation doesn't mandate that recipients of these funds use registered apprenticeship to train workers, but they certainly encourage it. It is certainly a highly encouraged activity, but not a required one. So electric vehicle infrastructure is another big area of focus. I included one example of the EV infrastructure here, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. This is providing $5 billion to states to really build an extensive charging network for electric vehicles across the country. This is just one example of a wide variety of projects and investments to support electric vehicles. There are certainly programs that relate to technology and manufacturing of sort of the components of electric vehicles, but this is just one that I wanted to highlight because it's a really big investment. Broadband, as I mentioned, is another big area of focus. States are receiving more than $42 billion through 2026 to expand the high-speed internet infrastructure in this country through planning activities, infrastructure development, literally building out the high-speed internet lines, particularly in rural communities, and also working on increased access and adoption programs, things like digital literacy, things like that. But again, the broadband infrastructure build out is a really big effort that states are working on. Again, federal agencies that are supporting these programs certainly encourage states to incorporate workforce development activities into their state plans for the electric vehicle charging network and the state broadband plans. So again, certainly encouraged activities, workforce development, including the use of registered apprenticeship. And then finally, a couple of examples from the Inflation Reduction Act. I've mostly been talking about very large programs, but I did just want to include an example of a project that was just announced last week. 3 states are receiving some funding to develop biofuel technologies that use sustainable biomass and waste feedstocks. These are specific projects in California, New Hampshire, and New York. The projects are receiving $6 million of total funding. So again, smaller in comparison to some of the other projects that I'm talking about, but did just want to highlight one example of a newly announced program. There are new announcements coming out every week still. And I did just want to touch briefly on the tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. So a number of tax credits do encourage and incentivize companies to really increase their use of clean energy. For many companies, these tax credits are increased by 5 times. So they get a 5 times higher tax credit if they pay prevailing wages to their workers and employ the use of registered apprenticeships in their project sites. These tax credits are in a wide variety of components of clean energy, and most of these tax credits are authorized through 2032. So just be aware of this is one of the examples where registered apprenticeship in particular is a directly encouraged or incentivized activity. So those are just a few examples of the types of projects that these investments are funding. Again, there is a huge range, a number of projects all across the country. Since my lens on this conversation today is on the use of registered apprenticeship, talking about specific occupations does matter a lot. So I wanted to just highlight some of the occupations and jobs where we're really anticipating seeing a big increase in need for these workers, and to create a strong pool of workers for these projects, we certainly need to work on expanding and developing that pool of skilled workers, and registered apprenticeship can be a great way to do that. So in construction, we see a number of occupations where high growth is anticipated, including power and telecommunication line workers and repairers, construction laborers, and equipment operators. In manufacturing, there are definitely anticipated increases in need for assemblers, fabricators, and electromechanical assemblers. I realized I forgot to mention there is a third law that's focused on um, uh, investing in the build out of chips manufacturing here in this country. So part of the manufacturing increase that we're seeing is related to that chips investment. But there's also a lot of components of manufacturing. Again, I mentioned electric vehicles earlier. The manufacturing of those component parts is one area where an increase in workers is definitely expected. And then in clean energy, the fastest growing jobs that we're seeing are in solar and wind, solar installers and wind turbine technicians. So it's important to note that while both construction and manufacturing are listed here as being expected to see really significant job growth in the coming years, these are also industries where there are significant workforce challenges today because of an aging workforce. So this is all compounded, just really indicating a real need to develop a skilled workforce in a number of these occupations just to support this growing investment in our country's infrastructure. And I think this is my last slide before I will turn it over to the next presenter. So just closing out with just a few notes on, what are the opportunities, the workforce implications and the opportunities here. So certainly, registered apprenticeship programs, as I've mentioned a couple of times, are a really great way to build a skilled workforce to support these infrastructure projects. of the newly created infrastructure jobs that we've seen so far, 69% of them do not require a bachelor's degree. However, we know that these jobs do require high quality training and education, and registered apprenticeship is a great way to do that. In addition, we know that women and communities of color are significantly underrepresented in many of these occupations related to infrastructure. And there's really a strong desire for the federal investments to create equitable job opportunities that are open to all. And finally, there are definite opportunities to really engage youth in terms of entering these occupations. The average, just for example, the average age for someone starting in a construction apprenticeship is 29 years old. So it's more important than ever to really work with sponsors and employers and industry and create opportunities and awareness for young people to enter these occupations. These can be really, really great careers, family sustaining wages. And again, registered apprenticeship is a really great way to engage young people in these careers and get them started for a great career path in the future. So that's the end of my presentation. My contact information is here on the slide, and I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Megan. We really appreciate all that terrific information that you shared with us in a very short amount of time. So next, we're going to turn the microphone over to Shonda Anderson, who serves as the director for the Office of Registered Apprenticeships here in the state of Kansas. And just to let everybody know, we'll be taking questions from our speakers at the conclusion here. Shonda and the next couple of presenters have about 10 minutes, so we'll have a good time to be able to ask questions and get some answers for you guys shortly. Shonda?
Shonda, it's a little hard to hear you.
You can't hear.
It's just a little muffled. We can hear that you're speaking. It's just a little muffled.
Okay, is that better?
That's much better.
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. Welcome everybody. I am so thrilled to be here. I think this is definitely an important conversation. In the Office of Registered Apprenticeship, we're seeing more and more specifically bioenergy, agricultural related projects that are cropping up across the state of Kansas that are tapping into this IIJA funding and the BIL funding. So that's why we came to the Kansas Department of Agriculture and said, hey, let's do a partner, webinar to try and get more of this information out there, because I think there's a lot happening in the agriculture space, a lot of opportunities in workforce development and apprenticeship in the agricultural space, but we need to get more specific information out there and talk with our ag partners across the state. Hence the other reason why we're doing a 7 a.m. Webinar, because we know ag people are up and awake this early in the morning. So welcome, and we are grateful you all are here. So just a little bit of background. I have an agriculture background myself. I've worked in the ag industry for many, many years. That's what my degree is in. So this is definitely a space that's near and dear to my heart. And with that, I've also had an opportunity to really grow out workforce development. And registered apprenticeship is very much, you've got to reframe your perspective on education. Registered apprenticeship is not training to get a job. This is not training to get a job. Instead, this is a job day one with mastery level understanding and mastery level training once the training is done, with the intent to have long-term employment. So I know I have to go through this very quickly, and we've got several other folks that we want for you to hear from. Alexa, stop. Sorry, Alexa's turning on and telling everybody to leave and get out the door. Okay, so very high level registered apprenticeship is not anything that's new. Kansas has always had a registered apprenticeship program since the 30s. In 2022, Governor Kelly established us as an office, which means that we have a line item budget in the state's budget. But this doesn't mean this is new to Kansas. We've had registered apprenticeship activity for generations in the state, but we are growing into other sectors like agriculture, healthcare, those kinds of areas. This is really important. Registered apprenticeship is not just a smart training system. There really is strong return on investment. Nationally, the average is $1.48 for every $1 expended on registered apprenticeship. I wanted to know what the state of Kansas return on investment is for every dollar spent. So we teamed up with the University of Kansas and worked with them. We did a survey of about 50 different businesses, Kansas businesses across the state, and found that return on investment for a business in Kansas is actually $2.13 for every $1. I came from the meatpacking industry, and I can tell you that the return on investment for ground beef is significantly less than that. So this is a great opportunity to really see some turnaround and grow your workforce in the long term. Registered apprenticeship is it's a combination of a lot of really good ideas because they make sense and they work. And there's literally hundreds of years of proof that this is a system and a training system that works. So first and foremost, a registered apprenticeship is going to be an employer designed and driven training program. They'll be structured on the job learning. There'll be education, related technical instruction that can come from a community college, a tech college, an organization, online, university, lots of different training opportunities there. There'll be wage progression, there'll be mentorship, and then valued credentials at the end of it. And those valued credentials are actually industry recognized nationally as well. So who's the apprenticeship system for? It's really for businesses in need of sustainable profit. So any business across the state of Kansas, I don't care if it's, meat packing, or you're doing poultry production, or you're growing corn, or you're building airplanes. Businesses have a need for sustainable profit, and to have that sustainable profit, you've got to be able to fill those hard to fill positions. You've got to have sustainability. You've got to have people in roles that can be in those roles for a long time and train new generations of people coming up. At the same time, we can be developing apprenticeship programs specifically for career-seeking workers, justice-involved, people with disabilities, rural workers, displaced workers, incumbent workers, all the different things. So there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice this kind of programming. We also have the ability to develop out registered apprenticeship for 16 and 17-year-olds and legally hire them into certain hazardous occupation areas. I know that when I say that, red flags start going off and you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense, Shonda. We've worked with the Kansas Department of Insurance to ensure that this is absolutely the case. If you have an interest in bringing younger people into your place of business and get them operating and working and do this safely and legally, that can be insured with your workman's comp insurance provider, contact us and we're happy to talk you through this. The other thing is that this is all well and good, but it does take steps to get there. And that's what the infrastructure funding, the tax incentives are to help with some of those steps, offset some of those costs. But I know for businesses, we've got to have the easy button. And we have done our very best in the state to create that easy button. And you're going to hear from some of the folks that are doing this right now. So we have a whole slew of intermediaries and apprenticeship hubs across the state of Kansas that can help you grow your program, that can integrate all the different training sectors in it that you need to have it in there. All those opportunities. You also have the opportunity to build your own program and be your own business's sponsor. That's great. That's something you can certainly do. We welcome that, and the state office will help walk you through that process. Let me also say that it is typically very cost efficient to actually get this moving forward. So a couple of things I want to point out. The Kansas Infrastructure Hub, we're working with them. It's a multi-agency organization, and it's housed within the Kansas Department of Transportation. They have match dollars and they have people who can help write the grants to get the funding to the state of Kansas. And so I would highly, highly suggest you reach out to the Kansas Infrastructure Hub. They can help you actually sit down and put the words on paper, get the application sent into the federal government to win those awards to the state of Kansas. They are working on water, transportation, broadband, cybersecurity, resiliency, and energy. And again, with the agriculture space where this is all kind of coming together, it's with our ag manufacturing and ag transportation side of the house, as well as the bioenergy side of the house, which that segues into crops, row crops, as well as some animal science bioenergy opportunities. I also have with Joel on the line. Joel, before I pass it over to you, I'm going to point out just a couple more people. For those projects that are starting to crop up across the state of Kansas and they're building out systems, or they're building large commercial buildings or heavy industrial buildings, that's considered a construction type project, which is allowable under the IIJA bill. I want to point out that we do have established joint apprenticeship training councils or unions that are operating in the state of Kansas that have laborers, construction workers that can be shovel ready and out on your projects tomorrow, essentially. That's where the Kansas and Missouri Laborers Association comes in. We have the plumbers and pipe fitters down in Wichita. We've got the electrical unions that have got folks ready to go to help build out some of these facilities. So there are some established intermediaries. There's some established intermediaries out in Western Kansas that are starting to build out more of these opportunities as well. All of this information is going to be up on the Registered Apprenticeship website. And we definitely encourage you to reach out to them. We also encourage you to reach out to your local workforce boards. Local Area 1, I know, covers most of Western Kansas. They're actually an intermediary themselves. They also have funding to help existing intermediaries help these businesses and contractors make these projects happen. Does that make sense? Okay, Joel, I'm going to let you take it off with the Kansas Farm Bureau, the RCAP program.
Yeah, thanks, Shonda. And for ease of understanding, we're an easy button that Shonda mentioned earlier. So what we do, we're a multi-employer sponsor. We work with employers to help get occupations approved through the state council for registered apprenticeships, and then we help the businesses administer and run those apprenticeship programs. We also use our network within the Kansas Farm Bureau system to help our clients advertise and recruit individuals to become registered apprentices. If you're not familiar with the Kansas Farm Bureau, we have 106,000 members in the state. We have county farm bureaus in all 105 counties. We've got a couple 100,000 people who follow us on social media and get all of our stuff here in Kansas. And so we use our network to partner with our clients to really expand the pool of employees that maybe would be looking for registered apprenticeship positions within your company. And if I can take 20 more seconds before Dana kicks me off, I just will give one example here. One of our employers has one of the occupations that they advertise for as a registered apprentice position. They had 14 applicants for that position. They also, at the same time, had a regular non-apprentice position open. This was for a heavy equipment operator, and they received 4 applications for that same job. So the registered apprenticeship is a great way to help recruit people to look to come build their careers, not just get a job, right, Shonda, within your company. And so we're, again, Kansas Farm Bureau, we're that easy button to help you with your registered apprenticeship program.
Sounds good.
All right. It's too early in the morning for me to control the computer. So the last thing I'll just say is that for those of you who want to learn a little bit more and to get integrated into the registered apprenticeship ecosystem within the state of Kansas, I noticed we've got some other intermediaries on the call right now. A great way to do that is to join our dinner bell calls. These are informational calls that happen once a month. It's the second Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. So not at dinner, it's at 10 a.m. But it's a great way to get involved. We also have tons of contact information for people that you can reach out to immediately today to start meeting some of your registered apprenticeship needs. And we're definitely here to help. So with that, Dana.
Sounds great. Shonda, Joel, thank you very much for your time and information specific more to Kansas. We really appreciate that this morning. So right now I'd like to introduce to you that are on the call, the newest member of the KDA Ag Marketing team, Jake Renner. And Jake is an agribusiness development manager, and he just started with the agency in December. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake, and he is going to take the lead on the town hall portion, and I'm going to exit left so he can have the whole screen. Jake.
Sure. Thanks, Dana. So I'm going to be helping you guys. We're going to kind of go through a Q&A. I know that was a lot of information very quickly from all of our guests, from all of our presenters today. So we want to give everybody a chance to ask some questions if they'd like. We're going to go ahead and allow you guys to open your mics and ask those questions directly if you would like. If you would rather type something in the chat box, I do have that pulled up, so I'm happy to relay those questions if you want. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you're going to type into the question box, make sure that you let us know who your question is for. That way we direct them in the right spot. The webinar is being recorded, so please keep lines muted if you are not asking or responding to a question. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or unmute at the appropriate time. There's quite a few of you on here, which is great. We love to see it, especially so early in the morning. So just keep that in mind as you guys unmute your lines. And then please direct all questions to the speaker, like I'd mentioned. But again, that chat box is there. Again, the webinar is recorded. We will be posting that on the KDA website at the first part of next week, once we get all of the technical details lined out. So if you guys know somebody who you thought might be on the call or maybe missed it due to some scheduling conflicts, please feel free to share that. And then we will be happy to answer any follow-up questions if you want. I guess I'd like to kick us off if you don't mind. Megan, if you could give us one thing from your presentation as a takeaway for those that were on the call or maybe joined a little bit late. If there's one thing you could highlight this morning, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And just a quick thumbnail sketch of what I talked about, and just to underscore, there's a huge amount of money coming out from the federal government to support build out and strengthening of our country's infrastructure. And what infrastructure means is really vast and really broad. And there's just a huge amount of building going on. And I think my takeaway is, just to be aware of that, but to make it Kansas relevant and Kansas specific, I would certainly encourage all of you. Shonda mentioned the Kansas Infrastructure Hub. They're a great resource for kind of what money and what funds are coming into Kansas. And I think that's just a great place to understand, to start with, to understand the landscape of what's going on in your state. And really just starting to think about what workers need to be developed and kind of what the opportunities are for really strengthening the infrastructure workforce here in Kansas. So that's a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of what I talked about, and just a couple of points I wanted to underscore.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that quick recap. You had mentioned there are so many opportunities, especially offered through both laws, right? Especially with IRA. You had mentioned transportation formula programs, broadband, electric vehicles, clean energy. The list goes on and on. So thanks for giving us that quick recap. Shonda, I've got a couple questions for you. So can state funding and tax incentives be added to incentives through the IIJA funding?
Yeah, so the big pieces is that depending on where the funding is coming from, more than likely funding can be braided. The tax incentives for the state of Kansas, the CTAG funding for the state of Kansas, absolutely, they are from a completely different funding stream. And those give employers $2,500 of tax incentives per apprentice, up to 20 apprentices per year. So that's $50,000 of tax incentives that you can put on your state income tax. The IIJA funding, it is a very complicated system. I would definitely make sure you have a great tax accountant and tax attorney to work with you on that. But those should not be, you shouldn't be ineligible for state tax incentives if you're going after those federal tax incentives. Additionally, we have funding that's out there with several intermediaries across the state, including the local workforce boards. Hutchinson Community College has some, Kansas Farm Bureau has some. Lots of different folks across the state have some funding that they can help you tap into to help grow your apprenticeship programming. We just need to make sure that if they're coming from the same funding stream, they can't be, we can't use the same amount of money or the same pockets of money for the same things, if that makes sense. But those guys are experts. You need to reach out to them directly and you can get more information on it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to pause for a moment. If anybody from the floor has got any questions, please feel free to unmute and address any of our guest speakers today.
I'm curious, who in the room is starting to look into these funding opportunities, or they know of projects that are utilizing these different funding opportunities across the state? It is early.
Shonda, this is Dave Mullins from Hutchinson Community College. I know we've got some employers that are taking advantage of some of the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits.
Great.
They've got some construction projects they're working on that are eligible for that tax credit.
Great. Awesome. I know we've got projects going on in Dodge City and Southwest Kansas for sure. And I believe that we've seen some projects up in North Central Kansas also.
And Shonda, this is Melissa Johnson with Montgomery County Action Council down in Kansas. And we've got a couple of projects in the works where I feel we can tap into these resources as well. So we'll certainly be in touch soon.
Fantastic. Yay. Awesome. All right, Jake.
For ag, their program. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, Dave and Melissa. Appreciate hearing that the resources are out there and that they're being read and utilized, and that you know who to contact if you guys need anything. Joel, do you have anything that you'd like to share kind of as a takeaway directly related to any sort of these ag incentives and the role that Farm Bureau is playing in those?
Yeah, so we have, thanks for the question, Jake. Yeah, we have one of our clients is working there in Southwest Kansas, who's a subcontractor to a larger contractor who's taking advantage of these funding opportunities. And so they reached out to us to help them run their program. And so we were able to work with them to create 5 different occupations. Not all of them they will use for this particular project that's receiving, and I don't know if it's IIJA funding or BLI funding, but several of them are for this specific project. But these are employees that careers that they'll have even beyond this particular project they're using. And so what we've found is, as we're working with them, is they're really getting excited about the program. They're seeing where they can expand it. And I will take a second, since we've got a couple of minutes, to talk about even outside of the funding, the occupations for positions that go towards these funding projects, we're seeing our clients, the businesses themselves, look within their organization to see how they can grow apprenticeship programs kind of across their workforce. Several of the organizations that we work for, they've transferred current employees out of a job into a registered apprenticeship position because that employee maybe wanted to do something different. And this provides that mechanism, a very structured training component for those employees who are already on the payroll, who are looking to grow their careers within the organization. So we're finding our clients are really enjoying utilizing a registered apprenticeship program kind of across the board. What we do at Kansas Farm Bureau is we just help make that a lot easier for them to do. They can absolutely, as Shonda mentioned, you can absolutely do a sponsorship of a registered apprenticeship program as a business yourself. Our clients are finding that utilizing Kansas Farm Bureau, and I know Hutch Community College is another one, and there's several other really good intermediaries out there. We just help amplify the pool of opportunity for you to bring people in. So we're pretty excited about it. We're a year and a half or 2 years into the program now. KFB.org/RKAP is our website. I don't know if you're sending out slides or anything like that, but we had a QR code up there earlier. But just get a hold of your local Farm Bureau, and they can get a hold of me, and we'll help you out.
Sure. Joel, do you have to be a member of Farm Bureau to utilize your resources?
I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be a member of the Kansas Farm Bureau in your general life. Jake, I don't know if you've seen our benefits page. Like, you can get $500 off of a Ford pickup truck. So like, that's just right there. No, you do not have to be a member of the Kansas Farm Bureau. Like, we're a nonprofit organization, and we've been fortunate enough to get some funding from Kansas Department of Commerce and the Office of Apprenticeships to help subsidize part of our costs. We do have a small fee that we charge for some of our services, but it's pretty nominal, and you make your money back. Again, what was Shauna's number, $2.13 for every dollar you invest in registered apprenticeships. Plus, there's some state tax credit money out there. So no, long answer, short question. You do not have to be a member. We're open to anybody in the state.
Perfect. Thank you. I understand.
Oh, you can also get you can also get a discount on on Lake of the Ozarks stuff, and Great Wolf Lodge. Take the kids. It's just a great time to be a member.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Well, especially with summer coming up right around the corner, right? We're just
right around the
all
corner.
The snow is gone, and it's summertime, and we need to take our kids somewhere. We'll start looking at those benefits, Joel. Appreciate it. I'm going to pause for just a couple more seconds here, see if anybody else from the floor has any questions. Again, feel free to type those in the chat box. If not, we'll go ahead and close out, give you guys some of your morning back. Doesn't look like we've got anybody unmuting. So again, want to thank everybody for taking time out of their morning. Megan, Shonda, Joel. Thank you guys for being a part of this morning. Very useful information, very helpful information. Tons of resources out there available for all of us here joining today, and that will watch the Zoom later. Again, the recording will be posted on the KDA website sometime at the beginning of next week. So if you know somebody that wasn't able to join us this morning, or you'd like to share it with any of your stakeholders, please feel free to do so. Again, continue to reach out to your stakeholders and share the information. Any questions can be forwarded to any of us. You probably saw some of the contact information. If not, feel free to reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction here from KDA. But with that, I will say our final goodbyes this morning. Shonda's going to enter stage left. Shonda, any closing comments?
No, I just think we want to bring this funding to the state of Kansas. We want to build out our infrastructure, our agriculture infrastructure, our transportation. We are a major transportation hub in the United States and a huge ag producer in the United States. So that's what these incentives are for, is to really tap into that. So I think the most important thing is that you have resources and people to help you build this out and make the most of it, with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Kansas Department of Commerce, and then all these other groups of folks that we are spidering across the state of Kansas to make this the most efficient possible.
Yep, absolutely. Could not have said it better ourselves. With that, we'll sign off and wish everybody a happy Thursday, and we're almost to the end of the week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.